morning everyone. Today I want to share with you 5 street photography tips that are gonna make you shoot more and better. Let's go! Alright guys, I hope you're having a blast today, and if you don't, I hope that video will make your day amazing. Today I'm gonna be sharing with you 5 street photography tips that I believe can transform your photography. Why am I doing that right now? It's because a lot of you guys have been asking about all the settings I was using in my video that I shot last week, where I was doing like 2 hours of street photography with you guys in Chicago. A bunch of you loved it. You dropped me a bunch of comments and you were asking, hey, what kind of gear were you using? What kind of settings were you using? So I thought I might do a follow-up with all those tips and also kind of share with you what's in my mind. How do I think about those images when it happens in the street? So if you're ready, let's get started with tip number 5. And tip number 5 in street photography is forget about your settings. Why is that? Because you should be concentrating on what you're trying to capture and the story you're trying to capture, and not necessarily how you're gonna capture them. Why is that? Simply because by the time you're done dialing all the perfect settings, most of the time you've missed that action, that perfect shot that you might have had in your mind. So for example, when I was in Japan a month ago, there was this girl crossing at Akihabara and she started running, and if I had to change my manual settings and tweak everything, I would have missed the shot 100% of the time. So what do? I shoot in aperture priority. Aperture priority is that like little mode here, A or AV on your camera. Basically what it does is that it lets you set your aperture, meaning you can control your depth of field, how much bokeh you have, how shallow your image is gonna be. So your camera is taking care of the shutter speed and the ISO, you're controlling the depth of field, and now if you're in situations where your shutter speed drags too low, well, there is a little hack. In most cameras you can set what we call the minimum shutter speed, and that minimum shutter speed allows you to tell your camera do not shoot under a certain speed. I shared that tip so many times in my videos, but I want to hammer it again. If you've never tried it, let me know in the comments. Look into your camera. If you can find it, it will allow you to always have that minimum shutter speed so you never miss a shot. It never gets blurry. Woo! I hope that makes sense for you. Now that you've dialed that in, let's forget about the settings and focus on the rest. Alright, and now my tip number 4 is to shoot primes over zooms. If you're a zoom person, try to shoot with prime lenses. If you're a prime person, well, stay how you are perfect. Now, let me explain. Shooting with prime lenses will really get you to think differently about most of your shots, for the simple reason that when you have a fixed focal length, you need to be focusing on your composition and your subject without being able to pull in and out, which means you're gonna move with your feet, and which also means you're gonna be able to maybe have more interaction with your subject, with your story. And most importantly, also something great about prime lenses is that you can have a wider aperture for cheaper price, and it is more discreet in most cases. And being discreet when you're out there in the street, we can all agree is a great advantage, especially when we're trying to be a little bit stealth, when we're trying to get those shots of people, of emotions, of scenes. The last thing you want is to get out there with a giant zoom lens and everyone's gonna get scared. So for example, what do I love to shoot? If I had only 2 lenses to recommend, it would be a 24mm 1.4 for example, and a 85mm 1.8. And if you had to be on a cheap budget, I would say 35mm 1.8 and 85mm 1.8. If you adjust those 2 lenses, even with a crappy camera body, you would get dope shots. You would be able to shoot in low light without any problem. And you know, unless you're able to spend 2K on a zoom lens, for low light, there is no other way than getting a good prime lens. And also, I forgot to mention, with a prime lens at 1.8 or 1.4 or 2, you're gonna get an amazing bokeh. And we all know that's something you're looking for in your shots sometimes, especially when you're trying to isolate a subject. All right, let's see what's next. And now guys, tip number 3, and one of the most important, is actually spend more time seeing versus capturing. What do I mean by that? I mean that in street photography, I spend so much time trying to observe and see what happens, trying to find what is interesting to my eyes, what I want to share with you, the viewer. And that is such an important tip that we often forget, because I get it, we go out there and we want to recreate cool shots we've seen somewhere else, or like scenes, but at the end of the day, street photography especially is all about our expression of the world. How do we see this world and how are we able to express it to other people? And photography is our vehicle. So first, before you ever capture, before you photograph, you need to be able to have that vision, and for that there is nothing like seeing. So whether you're practicing with a camera or without a camera, you can always practice to visualizing what's around you, seeing what story you want to tell, what feels very interesting, and what could make a compelling story for your eyes that you want to share with the rest of the world. And if you remember in that 2-hour-long video, I start straight the video by me shooting into that, I think it's a laundromat or like dry cleaner. For me, that was capturing the scene of a daily life, and especially when that woman looked towards me, it made it even more prominent because it left so much interpretation in that story. There was a sense of mystery, you don't know exactly what's happening, but that is what I wanted to convey to you. And before I even shot it, I had that in my mind, and that is important. Practice on seeing, observing before you ever get to click. And now tip number 2, guys, is use fairy lights intensively in all your photos for Christmas. No, I'm joking. All right, tip number 2 is simply go shoot in all weather. Let me tell you why this is so important. First of all, I know how nice and cozy it is to go shoot outside when it is sunny and when it is warm. But after a while, it gets very boring. You always get the same type of shot, strong light, harsh shadows, all that. That's cool, but go shoot in all weather. When you're gonna go shoot outside, when it's raining, when it's snowing, when it's freezing cold, when it's so cold that there is no one outside, well, that's when you're gonna get kind of shots that are completely different. Those shots that are different will help you get out of a creative rut, for example, and also they're gonna remotivate you because you're gonna rediscover the place maybe you've shot billions of times. You're gonna rediscover it a different way. Also, the one thing I love about Chicago is the weather is so different 4 times a year that you get completely different shots. You get some fog sometimes you get like crazy snow even before it's winter, and then you got like intense snow, and then you got like intense weather in the summer. I mean, basically you get diversity, and diversity is so important when you're doing street photography if you don't want to get bored, especially after shooting in the same city for a while. I hope that helps you. Whew. And now, guys, the one you've always been waiting for, tip number 1. Let's shake it, let's make it happen. Tip number 1 is crop your images. Oh yeah, I said it. I know I said the C word. So apparently a bunch of you have told me that some photographers, supposedly pro photographer, good photographers, told you that cropping is bad, that you should never crop your shots. And I thought that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard, if I'm very honest. Like, I can't understand why not cropping is a benefit, meaning if you got it right in camera, if your composition was perfect, but in so many situations we want to crop our shots afterwards. Why is that? The simple reason is I love cropping my photos to remove anything that's a little bit distracting in the image, that's not adding to my subject and to my story. Remember, street photography, all about the story, about that vision that you're trying to convey to your viewer, and if you crop your images, you might be able to get a better result than if you leave it as you shot it. And it's not bad. To be honest, like, I think the one I shot in Akihabara, I showed you at the beginning, I recropped it a little bit because when I was out there on the field, it happened so fast, I kind of like clicked it very quickly, and I didn't have time to compose it perfectly, otherwise I would have missed the shot. And the most important thing is to get the shot, and after you can re-straighten it, you can crop it a little bit, it always works out. And I'm gonna show you a few more examples of shots I've cropped in the past and that really benefited from it. So if you ever have a photographer that tells you you can't crop, tell him he doesn't know what he's talking about, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You do what you want. If it works out, that is what is the most important. Woohoo! All right, guys, I'm freezing out there. I'm gonna get ready tomorrow. We're gonna go on a big shoot. I hope those tips has been super helpful. I want to know in the comments if there is any type of photography you want me to try on the 10-minute challenge, whether it's a compact camera, cheap camera, whatever it is, or some prairie light photography, Christmas, whatever. I want to hear about it because I want to go on a new challenge very soon. We'll talk about it. In the meantime, guys, have an amazing day. Get out there, go shoot, try something different, try something new. This is the biggest advice ever. That should be from tip number 1 to 1,000 should be get out there and go shoot, because without that, nothing's gonna happen. And guys, for all of you out there who are trying to find your own voice and your own photos, remember every single one of you is different. Even if we were to shoot at the same location with the same idea, it would look different. So don't worry about what other people might be doing, what they might be saying. Try to keep digging into what you want to do, what you love to do, and most importantly, what you're trying to express to the rest of this world through your imagery. I hope that helped you. See ya!